Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to London, one of the great cities of the UK. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ian Stewart. I'm the CEO of HSBC UK. It's a bank now that's headquartered in Birmingham that supports around 15 million customers all around the UK, including 800,000 businesses, from sole traders to international conglomerates. And it's so good to see many of you in the room today. Now, as well as having deep roots in the UK, we are also an integral part of the HSBC Group, which operates in over 60 countries, and it gives us the ability to tap into 85% of the global trade flows. This connectivity has been at the heart of our business for well over 150 years, during which time the bank has witnessed periods of profound change, of growth, progress, but as well as significant turbulence and conflict. You don't need me to tell you the economic backdrop to today's discussion is challenging, arguably as challenging as we've seen in many years. For businesses in the UK, COVID has given way to recession, inflationary pressures, supply chain disruption, and a persistently tight labour market. In summary, if you're running a business today, you don't have to look far for your challenges. It's little wonder that business investment and confidence is low. Now, despite this backdrop, I remain optimistic. And maybe that's the benefit of old age, but I think it's something slightly different. The thing that gives me confidence is I speak to businesses every single day. It's a privilege of the job. And it's you who are telling me that you want to invest, you want to be creative, and you want to push forward. And the opportunities for growth undoubtedly exist, both at home and abroad, not least in the technologies that will underpin our future success as a country. So to my mind, a key question for today's conference is, how do we unlock those opportunities to give businesses the confidence to push forward? And I believe at the heart of that is partnership. So Keir's talked about it already this morning. I think partnership between business, policymakers, and communities is vital. Perhaps more than at any other point in our lifetime, the collective efforts of the private and public sectors, not just in Westminster and the City, but across the UK, need to be aligned and harnessed to achieve our ambitions, and first of all, cope with the current headwinds. And that's why we're delighted to be supporting today's event, which represents another reminder of the commitment that Labour has made under Sir Keir and Rachel to deeper engagement with business. That is not necessary, it's vital. As today's agenda suggests, whether it's about financing the transition to net zero, supporting regional growth, investing in skills, or driving international trade, we all have a role to play. No single actor can tackle issues of that scale in isolation. It's going to take partnership to meet the scale of these challenges, so that private finance and business investment, underpinned by coherent, clear policies and regulation, are pulling in the same direction, and more importantly, for the same end, to drive growth and prosperity to all parts of the country. With that in mind, and to keep this short, I am thrilled to be introducing the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who has the benefit of having worked both in the public and private sectors, at the Bank of England, and in the financial services industry, to reflect how we can work together to create the conditions for success. I wish you all a great day. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun with great debate. But for now, please put your hands together and welcome to the stage Rachel Reeves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you very much to HSBC for your part in sponsoring today's event. It's really great to be here with so many familiar faces in the audience, many of whom I've had the pleasure of working with since I became Shadow Chancellor a year and a half ago. It is that spirit of partnership which will guide our approach in government. As Keir has already set out this morning, that means a new business model for Britain to deliver the leadership and the growth that our country needs so that we can realise the promise of a greener, a fairer and a more prosperous Britain. Now, these are challenging economic times, but I know that the spirit of enterprise, of creativity and of endeavour are as present today in Britain as they ever have been. It has been a huge privilege to see that firsthand, from visiting Oxford Nanopore, leading work on DNA and RNA sequencing, to TRED in Leeds, which has launched the UK's first green debit card, to Moon Hub in East London, which I visited yesterday, where they are pioneering interactive virtual reality training. But we are at a post-Brexit crossroads. We can go down the road of managed decline, falling behind our competitors, or we can seize upon the bold thinking that is needed to propel us forward, to shape Britain's future outside the European Union while improving trading relationships with our nearest and our closest neighbours, applying ourselves with creativity, with determination and with some common sense so that we can lead the pack in the industries of the future. In that spirit, I want to say a huge thank you to Jim O'Neill, Alex DePledge, Julie Devonshire and Tom Adiola, and the many others who have brought their insight to Labour's Startup Review. The report that we are publishing today, Startup Scale Up, provides crucial insights towards achieving one of the guiding ambitions of the next Labour government, to make Britain the best place to start and to grow a business. As Chancellor, I will do everything I can to make that a reality. And this report sends a powerful message that Labour is back in business. Let me tell you why I believe that this is all so important. Innovation is a great British strength. It is in the fabric of our history and it endures today. Fast-growing firms already contribute £1 trillion to our economy and employ 3.2 million people. But I have heard time and again from business about the stubborn obstacles preventing them from scaling up and realising their potential, about issues with access to finance, especially patient capital, and the difficulty of turning brilliant ideas in our universities into commercial reality. Think then what we could achieve together if we remove those obstacles. The prize will be felt not only in new opportunities for those with the vision, the talent and the desire to seize them, but in wealth that will flow into our communities across our country, in pride in those successful new businesses, and in a more prosperous and more dynamic Britain. We have already begun to set out some of the steps that we will take to reach that goal. The next Labour government will abolish business rates, which place an unfair burden on small and high street businesses, and replace them with a fair system fit for the 21st century. And we will push power out of Westminster, providing our local and regional leaders with the tools to support the creation of new economic clusters, so that our digital, medical, environmental, creative industries and so much more can thrive in every part of Britain. But we can and we must go further. If the UK had the same level of venture capital investment as a proportion of our GDP that the US does, that would amount to an additional £16 billion of venture capital investment, nearly double our current level, bringing with it more innovation, more opportunity, and higher economic growth. That is why today we welcome this radical plan to make Britain the high-growth, homegrown startup hub of the world. The panel was tasked with giving us a roadmap to get there, asking the difficult questions and presenting solutions. Take our pension funds. Defined benefit funds in Britain have almost £3 trillion worth of assets under management. But right now, it is more often Canadian pension savers who benefit from startups here in Britain than savers here at home do. If we could take advantage of that wealth, unlocking even a proportion of those investments, then we could drive greater investment in homegrown businesses and greater returns to British pension savers. France's TB scheme has secured more than 18 billion euros of investment for new and growing businesses in France by using the convening power of government to bring institutional investors together with venture capital. The question is, why are pension savers and businesses not feeling those benefits here in Britain? And so the next Labour government will commit ourselves to the task. This report contains ideas about so much more, about the ambition and the autonomy of the British Business Bank and access to patient capital, building on and widening access to our existing system of tax reliefs for entrepreneurs, supporting and leading universities and researchers to help translate their work into new businesses and new economic growth, and how to build on Britain's existing strengths in life sciences, fintech, and more. Britain can achieve so much in innovation, in trade, and in growth. We have the ability, but we need government and business working together to make the most of that great potential, to spread opportunity far and wide right across the country, and to allow everyone with the talent, the effort, and the ideas to see their vision through to reality. That is the task ahead, to build the Britain that I know we can be, an enterprising, dynamic country able to rise to the challenges posed in a changing world. The work to make this a reality will begin on day one of the next Labour government. Thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jim. I've got some questions to take. Ian Watson from the BBC first.
Thanks. You mentioned pension funds. I've just been going through your document, which denounces the conservatism in UK asset management and the risk-averse investment culture in this country. But of course, we've had the 2008 financial crash when on Labour's watch. Do you think there are some dangers in trying to get pension funds, and we see how volatile they were during the mini-budget, pouring into potentially dodgy startups?
I don't see it like that at all, actually, Ian. What I see is a huge pot of money not earning the returns that pension savers in other countries do. And there's plenty of evidence, I think it's in this report, that returns for pension savers could be 10% higher if just a small fraction of those pension savings were invested into startups because of the huge growth potential. Now, what you've got in France is government working with the venture capital industry to sort of accredit schemes that then can be invested on behalf of pension savers. That is seeing more money flow into French startups, and the French are starting to eat our lunch when it comes to investing in startups. I want us to get a slice of that action, and you see it in other countries, Canada and Australia, investing pension savers' money here in Britain in our great startups, but not enough money of British pension savings is it being invested, and so we're not getting those returns on the investment here. So I see this as a double win, a chance to get more long-term patient capital, which is what pension fund investment is, into our startups, but also an opportunity to improve the return for pension savers, which is something that is really important too. Next question, I think, is from Harriet Line at the Daily Mail.
Thank you. You've said that Labour would do everything it can to prevent strike action, but you've looked at the books. Would you give nurses a 19% pay rise that they're demanding?
Well, what Keir has said today and what I've said previously is that we would get round the negotiating table to resolve these disputes. Earlier this week, we had a vote in Parliament on whether the non-dom tax regime should continue or whether those loopholes should be closed and the money used instead, £3.2 billion, to invest in one of the biggest expansions of the NHS workforce in a generation. That's saying, if you will, to NHS workers, the cavalry is coming funding under Labour. Now, the Tories voted against that. It's a matter of priorities. Labour don't think that those tax loopholes for non-dom should continue, especially in an environment when there's so little money available for our crucial public services. So that's just one of the different choices that Labour would make, which would also, I think, give some of that assurance to our NHS workers that backup will be there, that we will expand the NHS, because this isn't just all about pay. This is about workload, a lack of staff in the NHS, so that at the end of a nurse's shift, often she can't go home because there's no one to take over. And that has got to end. So this is, of course, about money, and we will get around the negotiating table and try and resolve this dispute, but it's also making sure that the NHS is fit for the future as well. The next question is Saba Meddings from Bloomberg.
Hi. How can we get more businesses to list in the UK? There's been data that shows that Paris has overtaken the London capital markets. What can we do to make it more appealing?
Well, thanks for that question. It's one of the things that the team looked at as part of this review. And when talking to startups, one of the biggest things that they say about why they go abroad is because that is where, particularly in the US, you can access that long-term patient capital. And because that's where your investors are, that ends up being where they list as well. So the reforms that Jim and the team have spoken about in this review, about accessing some of that long-term funding through pension funds, but also through reforming the British Business Bank, is also about trying to keep those businesses here in Britain and getting them listing on the London Stock Exchange rather than NASDAQ or AIM, etc., which is happening, I think, far too often today. Thanks for that question. And the final question, I think, from Kieran Stacey at The Guardian. Hi, Kieran.
Hi, thanks very much for taking the question. You say the strikes are not all about pay, but Keir Starmer said earlier that the people who are going out on strike are facing a very real cost of living crisis and struggling to pay their bills. So it is obviously partly about pay. Do you not agree that those workers who are going out on strike deserve more of a pay rise than they're currently being offered?
Well, look, we've got inflation at a 40-year high and the wage offers which are barely half of the rate of inflation. And this is after a decade or more of austerity in public sector pay. So I totally understand why workers are looking for a pay rise, whether in the public or private sector. It shows the importance of what Keir spoke about earlier, about economic stability and getting a grip of inflation, and the support that Labour has spoken about to help people, with, for example, with their gas and electricity bills. Of course, this is in part about pay, but if you talk to anybody who works in the NHS, they say this is not just about pay, this is about workload, this is about respect, this is about dignity. And I just repeat what Keir said earlier. 13 years of Labour government and the nurses never went on strike. What is it about this Conservative government that week after week, day after day, more industrial action is being taken? It's because the respect that our public sector workers, our key workers deserve is sorely lacking from this Conservative government.
You say that you understand that people are looking for a pay rise. If you were in government, would you be willing to give them one?
I'm not going to pluck numbers out of the air, and I've said that everything in a Labour manifesto will be fully costed and fully funded. That's why we set out in Parliament just this week how we would fund that expansion of the NHS workforce by ending the tax loophole, which means that non-DOMs don't pay tax on their global income, even though they make their home here in Britain. Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. Now I'll go and join the panel.